Right now, somewhere in your kitchen, there's probably a bag of chips, and there's a good chance the brand you trust the most is quietly doing the most damage. Not because the company is evil, because the entire industry has spent 70 years perfecting one skill, making something cheap, oily, and mildly addictive look like an innocent snack. Today, we're opening every bag. We're going to show you exactly which brands are cutting corners, which additive shows up on more ingredient labels than most people realize, and which 8 brands actually earned their reputation. By the end of this video, you will never read a chip bag the same way again, and you'll probably never look at the snack aisle in your grocery store quite the same way either. Let's start with the origin story almost nobody knows, because it explains everything about how this industry thinks. The potato chip is widely credited to a chef named George Crumb, working at a resort in Saratoga Springs, New York, back in the 1850s. According to the popular version of the story, a customer kept sending his fried potatoes back, complaining they were too thick. Crumb, frustrated, sliced the potatoes paper thin, fried them until they were brittle, and doused them in salt out of spite. The customer loved them. Within a few decades, that spiteful kitchen trick became a packaged, mass-produced industry. And here's the part that matters for this video. From its very first moment, the potato chip was never designed to be nutritious. It was designed to be irresistible. That founding purpose never changed. It just scaled. Now fast forward to the modern version of that industry. The potato chip aisle in an average American grocery store generates billions of dollars every single year. It is one of the most profitable sections in the entire store, and profit margins on snack foods are notoriously higher than almost anything else on the shelf. That single fact should already make you suspicious. When margins are that high, something in the process is usually being minimized to keep costs down. Sometimes it's the potato, sometimes it's the oil, and very often it's the fine print you never bother to read. Here's where the science gets uncomfortable. When potatoes hit hot oil, something called the Maillard reaction kicks in. Sugars and an amino acid called asparagine, both naturally present in potatoes, react under high heat and create that golden color and crispy bite everyone loves. But that same reaction produces a byproduct called acrylamide. The World Health Organization and the FDA both classify acrylamide as a substance formed during high-temperature cooking that shows up in fried and baked foods, and it has been studied extensively because of its potential health effects. The National Cancer Institute has reviewed a large number of human studies and found no consistent link between everyday dietary acrylamide and cancer risk in people. But animal studies using much higher concentrations did show tumor development, which is why regulators keep monitoring it closely. The European Food Safety Authority went further in 2015, concluding that acrylamide in food could potentially raise cancer risk over a lifetime of exposure. 2 major health bodies, 2 different levels of concern. That gap alone tells you the science isn't finished. But that's only the beginning. Between 2011 and 2015, the FDA tested about 2,500 food samples specifically looking for acrylamide levels, focusing on categories known to run high, including chips and crackers. The results actually showed improvement. Levels had dropped compared to testing done a decade earlier, suggesting manufacturers had started adjusting frying times and temperatures. That's the good news. The uncomfortable news is that acrylamide levels vary wildly, even between bags of the exact same brand, depending on the batch, the potato's sugar content, and how long it sat in the fryer. There is no fixed number printed anywhere on a chip bag telling you how much you're actually eating. Here's an analogy that makes this easier to picture. Think of acrylamide formation like a dimmer switch rather than an on-off button. The darker and crispier a chip gets, the more that reaction has progressed, and the higher the acrylamide concentration typically climbs. That's why the FDA's own consumer guidance specifically recommends aiming for a golden color rather than a deep brown when frying or toasting starchy foods at home. Manufacturers know this too, which is part of why some brands quietly adjust their frying times to land on the lighter end of golden rather than the darker, more caramelized end that some flavor profiles actually call for. A darker, more intensely roasted-looking chip isn't automatically more dangerous, but as a general pattern across a whole product line, it's a reasonable signal worth noticing. There's a second layer to this story most viewers have never heard of. A small pilot study published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition in 2009 tracked a group of people who ate a controlled amount of potato chips daily for 4 weeks, supplying roughly 157 micrograms of acrylamide per day. Researchers found measurable changes in oxidized LDL cholesterol and inflammatory markers in that group. It was a small study, not proof of long-term harm, but it was enough to make nutrition researchers pay closer attention to chronic, everyday snacking habits rather than occasional indulgence. The takeaway isn't that one bag of chips will hurt you. It's that habitual daily consumption interacts with your body in ways a single serving never will. Stay with me, because the real reason 12 specific brands made this list is even more revealing. And it has almost nothing to do with the potato itself. It's the preservative hiding in the ingredient list that most shoppers scroll right past. It's called TBHQ, short for tertiary butyl hydroquinone, and its job is simple. It stops the oil in your chips from going rancid, extending shelf life dramatically. The FDA approved TBHQ back in 1972 and capped its use at just 0.02% of a product's total oil content. That's an incredibly small allowed amount, which sounds reassuring until you realize how many products in your pantry contain it simultaneously. The Environmental Working Group has placed TBHQ on its list of chemicals of concern, citing published research connecting it to potential immune system effects, including impacts on the body's ability to regulate inflammation. Regulators in Europe have gone as far as banning TBHQ from infant formula specifically because of safety concerns for very young children, even though it remains legal in formula sold in the United States. That regulatory gap between two developed regions using the same science is exactly the kind of detail that should make you pause the next time you flip a bag over. To put that regulatory number in perspective, 0.02% sounds almost like rounding error. But food chemists use these tiny percentages deliberately because even small amounts of a fat-soluble compound can influence how oil behaves at a molecular level over months of shelf storage. The FDA's approval in 1972 predates most of the research techniques scientists use today to study long-term, low-dose chemical exposure, and updates to that approval have been incremental rather than a full modern reassessment from scratch. That doesn't automatically mean the original approval was wrong. It does mean the regulatory framework protecting you was built with the scientific tools available half a century ago, then patched over time rather than rebuilt. Here's the twist almost nobody talks about. TBHQ isn't inherently dangerous at the tiny doses used in a single product. The danger, if there is one, comes from something called cumulative exposure. If your crackers have it, your frozen waffles have it, your instant noodles have it, and your chips have it, you're not eating one small dose. You're stacking several small doses across an entire day, every day, for years. No regulatory body currently tracks that cumulative number for the average consumer. That's the blind spot the entire snack industry benefits from. Now here's where this story gets bigger than potato chips. In the last 2 years, a fast-growing wellness movement has put a target on an entire category of cooking oils, the seed oils. Canola, soybean, corn, and sunflower oil have been used by the food industry for decades because they're cheap, shelf-stable, and neutral in flavor. Critics of these oils argue that their high concentration of omega-6 fatty acids can promote inflammation when consumed in excess, and that modern diets have shifted dramatically toward these oils compared to a century ago. This argument has spread rapidly through social media and functional medicine circles, and it has genuinely changed how millions of people shop. On the other side, many mainstream nutrition scientists and major health organizations maintain that seed oils, when consumed as part of a balanced diet, are not inherently dangerous and can even support heart health compared to saturated fats. This is a real ongoing scientific debate, not a settled fact in either direction. What is measurable and undeniable is consumer behavior. Search interest in seed oil-free products has surged, and food companies have responded fast, rolling out avocado oil, olive oil, and even beef tallow versions of products that used to be made exclusively with cheap seed oil blends. It's worth pausing here to be clear about what's proven and what's still contested, because a documentary that only tells you one side isn't actually informing you. The claim that seed oils are uniquely dangerous at typical consumption levels is not something the broader scientific and medical community has universally accepted, and several long-term studies have found that replacing saturated fats with polyunsaturated seed oils correlates with improved cardiovascular markers in many populations. At the same time, the argument that modern diets have shifted the ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 fats dramatically compared to a century ago is grounded in real data, and some researchers genuinely believe that shift deserves more attention than it currently gets. Reasonable, well-credentialed people disagree about how much this actually matters for the average person's health. What isn't up for debate is that this disagreement has already reshaped an entire industry, and that shift is what makes this ranking possible in the first place. That single shift in consumer demand is the reason this ranking exists at all. It's why some brands are scrambling to reformulate and why others are doubling down on the cheapest oil possible because it protects their margins. But before we get to the list, there's one more piece of this puzzle, and it might be the most important one because it explains why you keep reaching for the bag in the first place. Food scientists have a term for the exact combination of salt, fat, and crunch that makes a snack nearly impossible to stop eating. It's often called the bliss point, a concept popularized in food industry research and widely discussed by food scientists studying processed snacks. Manufacturers spend enormous resources testing precise ratios of salt to fat to sugar until they land on a formula that maximizes craving without ever quite reaching the point of feeling too salty or too rich. That's not a conspiracy theory. It's a documented engineering discipline inside major food companies, complete with dedicated flavor labs and sensory panels whose entire job is optimizing how addictive a chip feels in your mouth. Once you understand that the crunch, the seasoning, and even the sound the bag makes when you open it were all deliberately engineered variables, it becomes a lot easier to understand why willpower alone rarely wins against a bag of chips. Then there's sodium, the ingredient hiding in plain sight on every single nutrition label. A typical 1-ounce serving of mainstream potato chips contains somewhere between 150 and 230 milligrams of sodium, and most people don't stop at 1 ounce. The American Heart Association recommends keeping total daily sodium intake under 2,300 milligrams, with an ideal target closer to 1,500 for most adults. That means a single sitting with a family-size bag of flavored chips can realistically account for a third or more of your entire daily sodium budget before you've eaten anything else all day. Combine that with the fact that heavily flavored, wet-seasoned chips tend to run even higher in sodium than plain salted varieties, and you start to see why the brands relying most heavily on bold, addictive flavor profiles also tend to carry the heaviest sodium loads. It's not an accident. Salt is cheap. It's a powerful flavor enhancer, and it plays directly into that bliss point formula we just talked about. Which brings us finally to the moment you've been waiting for. We're about to walk through 12 potato chip brands that consistently rely on the cheapest oils, the most preservatives, or the least transparency about what's actually inside the bag. Keep in mind, formulas change constantly, and regional versions of the same brand can differ. Always check the ingredient panel on the specific bag in front of you. But based on how these companies have historically formulated their most popular flavors, here's where the red flags cluster. Number 12 is generic store-brand chips, the ones sitting quietly beneath the name brands with almost identical packaging and a price tag that's usually $1 or $2 cheaper. These private label chips are manufactured to hit the lowest possible price point, which almost always means the cheapest available frying oil, typically a blend of soybean, corn, or sunflower oil, depending on what's cheapest that quarter on the commodity market. Because the actual manufacturer behind a store brand often changes based on bulk supply contracts that get renegotiated every year or two, the exact oil blend can shift from batch to batch without any change to the label design at all, meaning you genuinely never know what you're getting from one shopping trip to the next, even if the packaging looks identical. Number 11 is Munchies, the puffed corn and potato snack mix that markets itself around bold, addictive flavors and a rotating lineup of limited edition tastes. Longevity in this industry usually correlates with formula stability, meaning the company has had little financial incentive to move away from the cheap oil blends that built its business model in the first place, since changing suppliers or oils at scale is expensive and risks alienating loyal customers who expect a very specific, familiar taste. What happened next in our research actually surprised us. Number 5 is the standard non-avocado line from Kettle brand, a company that markets itself heavily around the word natural on nearly every panel of the bag. Kettle's original formulas are typically fried in safflower or sunflower oil, both technically seed oils, even though the brand's thick-cut artisanal packaging creates the impression of a fundamentally different, more wholesome product than what's sitting on the shelf right next to it. This is a textbook example of how packaging psychology can outrun the actual ingredient panel, and it's exactly the gap this video is designed to close. Number 4 is the standard line from Cape Cod, another brand leaning heavily on a nostalgic, small-batch, New England beachside aesthetic, complete with imagery of waves and weathered wood on the bag. Despite the charming branding, the core recipe still relies on a conventional vegetable oil blend, and because Cape Cod chips are kettle-cooked at a slower pace and higher oil saturation than standard fried chips, the sodium and fat content per serving often runs on the higher end compared to lighter, less processed alternatives. Number 3 is Ruffles, the ridged sibling of the Lay's family, engineered specifically to hold more dip and, by extension, absorb more oil during frying because of its increased surface area. The wavy design that makes Ruffles so popular at parties and game day spreads is also the exact design feature that increases oil content per chip compared to a flat cut, meaning the same serving size delivers noticeably more fat than its flat counterpart from the same company. Number 2 is Lay's Classic, the single most recognized potato chip on earth and arguably the flagship of the entire industry, because Lay's operates at a scale few competitors can match. Supplying tens of thousands of stores across the country, its recipes are engineered first for consistency and shelf stability, using whichever seed oil blend is most cost-effective at any given time, depending on regional sourcing and shifting commodity prices. That means the exact oil in your bag can genuinely differ depending on where and when you bought it, even though the bag itself looks identical from coast to coast. And number 1, the brand that tops this list is the aggressively seasoned, neon-dusted flavored kettle chip lines now sold under multiple major snack umbrellas, the kind built around bold names like extreme heat or loaded flavors designed to dominate a shelf display. These products combine everything on this list at once: a standard seed oil base, heavy reliance on TBHQ preserved flavor powders to maintain shelf life through months of warehouse storage, and sodium levels that frequently exceed 20% of a recommended daily intake in a single small serving. If there's one category worth reading the label on before you buy, it's this one. That's the list of 12. But stay with me, because the biggest revelation in this entire video is still ahead. If every mainstream brand is built around the same handful of compromises, does that mean better chips simply don't exist? Not even close. This is where the story flips entirely. Over the past several years, a wave of smaller, ingredient-focused brands has proven that a genuinely better chip is not only possible, it's already sitting on store shelves right now, usually just one aisle over from the brands we just covered. Number 8 on our better list is Torres, a Spanish import that does something almost no other mass-market chip brand commits to fully. Every single bag is fried exclusively in extra virgin olive oil, not a blend, not a partial substitution, the real, unrefined oil from start to finish. Most competitors that advertise olive oil on the front of the bag quietly use a cheaper refined version that has been chemically processed and has lost much of its flavor and nutritional benefit along the way. Torres skips that shortcut entirely, and you can genuinely taste the difference in the finished chip, which carries a noticeably richer, more peppery flavor than anything fried in a neutral seed oil. Number 7 is Terra, known for its colorful root vegetable chips made from beets, taro, and parsnips alongside potato, giving the bag a visually striking mix of purples, oranges, and yellows that stands out immediately on the shelf. Certain lines in the Terra portfolio are fried in avocado oil rather than a standard seed oil blend, giving health-conscious shoppers a genuinely different nutritional profile without sacrificing the satisfying crunch and variety of textures people expect from a mixed vegetable chip. Number 6 is Boulder Canyon, a brand built almost entirely around avocado oil as its primary frying medium across nearly its entire product line, not just a single specialty flavor. Because avocado oil has a notably higher smoke point than most seed oils, it holds up better under the sustained high frying temperatures a commercial kitchen requires, and some research suggests that oils which resist breakdown under heat may produce fewer harmful byproducts compared to oils that oxidize more easily during extended frying. The biggest insight in this entire investigation is still ahead, so don't go anywhere. Number 5 is Good Health, a lesser-known brand that has quietly built its entire identity around avocado oil frying, particularly in its popular veggie chip and kettle-style potato chip lines that rarely get the shelf space or marketing budget of the bigger national names. Unlike brands that treat avocado oil as a premium, limited edition add-on flavor, Good Health uses it as the default across most of its product range, which is a meaningfully different, more consistent commitment than a single specialty item buried on the bottom shelf. Number 4 is Jackson's Honest, and its origin story is different from almost every brand on this list, which is exactly why it deserves a closer look. The company was founded by a family after their son Jackson was diagnosed with a rare autoimmune disorder, and they discovered through trial and error that a high-fat, low-carbohydrate diet helped manage his condition significantly. That personal medical necessity, born out of one family's search for food their son could actually eat safely, became the entire foundation of the company. Every product, from their original sea salt potato chips to their sweet potato and spicy jalapeno flavors, is fried exclusively in avocado oil, with no seed oils anywhere in the ingredient list, a promise the brand has stuck to since its earliest stovetop batches. Number 3 is Kettle Brand's newer avocado oil line, a direct response from a legacy company to the exact shifting consumer demand we talked about earlier in this video. Sitting right alongside their traditional safflower and sunflower oil chips on the same shelf, this newer line uses 100% avocado oil across flavors like sea salt, apple cider vinegar, and their signature special sauce blend, giving loyal Kettle customers a genuinely reformulated option without switching brands entirely. It's proof that even legacy companies built on old formulas can adapt quickly when enough shoppers start reading labels and demanding better. Number 2 is Siete, a brand that built its entire following around grain-free avocado oil-cooked products, originally rooted in Mexican-American family recipes passed down for generations before becoming a national product line. Their chip lineup skips seed oils completely and leans on simpler, shorter ingredient lists compared to the mainstream competition, which matters more than most shoppers realize because ingredient count is one of the simplest, most reliable proxies for how processed a food actually is, even without a food science degree to interpret every chemical name on the panel. And number 1, our top pick, is the Good Crisp Company, built around a genuinely short ingredient list, non-GMO potatoes, and a frying process that avoids the synthetic preservatives like TBHQ found throughout the mainstream industry we covered earlier. While some of their lines use palm oil rather than avocado or olive oil, palm oil carries a very different nutritional profile than seed oils, with a much more stable saturated fat structure that holds up better under high heat and resists oxidation during storage, though shoppers concerned about deforestation and sustainability should look specifically for the roundtable on sustainable palm oil certification on the package to ensure responsible sourcing before buying. So what does all of this actually mean for you standing in the snack aisle this weekend? It means the front of the bag was never designed to help you. Words like natural, artisanal, and premium carry no legal definition in the United States and can be printed on virtually any product, regardless of what's actually inside. The only part of the packaging that's actually regulated for accuracy is the ingredient list on the back. In that small, unglamorous font nobody wants to read while standing in a crowded grocery store with a cart full of other decisions waiting to be made. That list is the one place a company is legally required to tell you the truth, whether they want you reading it or not. Here's your practical takeaway, broken down into steps you can actually use the next time you're standing in that aisle. First, flip the bag over before you flip it into your cart. Look for the type of oil listed first, since ingredients are legally required to appear in descending order by weight, meaning whatever is listed first makes up the largest share of the product. Second, if you see the word hydrogenated anywhere on the label, put it back immediately, no exceptions, since partially hydrogenated oils are linked to artificial trans fats that most nutrition authorities agree carry real cardiovascular risk. Third, scan specifically for TBHQ, and if you're already eating that same preservative across crackers, frozen meals, and baked goods elsewhere in your pantry, remember that those small individual doses are stacking up throughout your day in ways no single label tracks for you. Fourth, count the ingredients. A shorter list, more often than not, correlates with a less processed product, even when the front-of-bag marketing looks nearly identical to a competitor sitting right next to it on the shelf. And finally, don't assume price tells you anything reliable. Several of the better brands on this list cost roughly the same as the mainstream options once you account for bag size, which means the real barrier for most shoppers has never been affordability. It's simply been awareness, and now you have that. None of this means you need to swear off potato chips forever, and honestly, nobody making this video expects you to. Food is allowed to be enjoyable, and an occasional bag of your favorite mainstream brand at a barbecue or a movie night is not going to define your long-term health on its own. What this investigation should change is your default habit, the bag you reach for automatically, week after week, without ever thinking twice about what's actually inside it. Small, repeated choices compound over years far more than any single indulgence ever will. A slightly better oil, a shorter ingredient list, one fewer synthetic preservative, none of these swaps feel dramatic in the moment. But stacked across hundreds of snacking decisions over a decade, they add up to a meaningfully different relationship with the food sitting in your pantry. That's true for chips. And honestly, it's true for almost everything else stocked on the shelves around them, from crackers to frozen meals to the dressing sitting in your refrigerator door right now. It's also worth remembering that this entire category is still evolving quickly. 2 years ago, several of the better brands on this list barely had national shelf presence at all. The fact that a legacy company like Kettle Brand felt enough pressure to launch a full avocado oil line tells you something important. Consumer awareness is already reshaping this industry in real time, and it's happening faster than most people realize. Every time a shopper chooses the shorter ingredient list over the familiar bag, that choice registers somewhere in a spreadsheet at corporate headquarters. Enough of those choices, repeated often enough, is exactly what turns a niche health brand into the next major label, reformulating its entire product line. If this deep dive changed the way you'll shop this week, that's exactly what this channel exists for. Drop a comment with the brand that surprised you the most, share this with the one person in your life who still swears their chips are the healthy kind, and subscribe if you want more investigations like this one breaking down what's really inside the food on your shelf. We'll see you in the next one.